Barry has also emailed in. He starts off by saying, good afternoon, Doug and Tony, and saying how extremely helpful your website, Light for the Last Days, and Reachout Trust is. They really encourage you. So encourage you. Thank you, Barry, for that. Then he has a question which is relevant to what we're doing now. My question is to do with the time when Satan is loosed after the 1,000 years. Okay, so we talked about the 1,000 years. It then does say that he's loosed. Perhaps I'm missing something in the Bible about this, but would just like to know your thoughts on why this has to happen and the purpose of it. Obviously, only God knows the exact detail, but still interested in your thoughts. Many thanks, and God bless you both.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why some would say that an allegorical explanation makes sense. It's just another picture of Armageddon or the end time, and Satan being loosed. It's one of the problematic issues, I have to say, and it does seem from this passage, also Isaiah 65, which is another passage which deals with the millennial period, when it does speak about sinners being born and dying 100 years old during a period which seems to be the millennium from most interpretations.
Yes.
Which wouldn't line up with heaven because there are no sinners born in heaven. So the possibility that during this millennial period there are survivors of the tribulation who go in and repopulate the earth, and people are born during that time, and that they, as it were, they're stuck with Jesus as King, as Lord. They can't vote him out of power because he's ruling with a rod of iron, but in their hearts they're in rebellion against him.
Right.
And some have said that one reason for this rebellion actually is it shows that even if you create the perfect world with the perfect government, because of sin, when they have the opportunity to sin and rebel and Satan's loose, then they'll join in with him. But that's one of the difficult issues, and to say it's one of the things which has exercised my mind, but that's how I would look at that one.
Mm-hmm. So whereas again you may not be able, as indeed Barry says, to say exactly why it happens. God is going to allow it to happen, and of course, in one sense, it could be that testing time. He's bound for 1,000 years. In that period of time, people have the option of choice without him being there. Then, of course, after he's released, it talks about those that would go and follow him at that point, before he is finally bound and dealt with once and for all.
Yes, I mean, you have a number of falls of Satan. I mean, the picture which you usually have of Satan sitting in a pitchfork in hell is actually not biblical.
That's right.
At the present time, he's the prince of the power of the air.
Yes, that's right.
And then he falls to the earth, and then he's bound in the pit. And finally, his final abode is the lake of fire.
And of course, he is not chosen to create that realm and be king there. He is placed there. And I think, again, that's the other picture that sometimes Christians have in a wrong picture of thinking that, he's, as it were, this is his domain and he's ruling over it. Sure. He's as much bound as anybody else that's there. Yeah. Interesting. Another question here from Walter, which again is very much on this. Walter says he's been totally engrossed in all we've been saying. Question regarding Armageddon. Okay, so we had this about this time. I've heard many pastors who refer to the revival of the Roman Empire and the combining of various countries, including Russia, but they do not mention the inclusion of America. Where does America fit in?
Yeah, well,
very topical at the moment.
America came out of Europe in a sense, so I would see America as possibly always still part of this revived Roman Empire.
Right.
I mean, there are some who say America is going to be wiped out and then Europe will arise, maybe, but I'll see. But it could be even that America is still the powerful nation. It has a charismatic leader now who's going to offering peace and safety. I'm not going to say he's the man, but it's interesting that you have now this sort of world adulation of Obama, which
I know. I was reading
through the possibility of some kind of peace settlement in the Middle East. Whether it will come about in the immediate future remains to be seen, but that's very much on the agenda. And America is even under Bush, America is the leading force seeking to bring about the peace settlement between Israel and the Palestinians. So I don't write off America, and I think that just watch the space.
And of course, in many ways, America has been very much in with Europe, hasn't it? And in with all the security areas with regard to Europe. Yeah. America has very much been joined as part of that, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I mean, next week they're having this big conference in the United States to discuss the financial situation with 20 leading world economists, and they'll be looking to bring about some kind of a new world order to regulate the economic situation.
And I think sometimes, as you say, it's difficult to be able to be totally exact on some of these things, but again, it's being open and looking. I noticed several emails from people, obviously, over the last few days, sort of claiming that Obama is the Antichrist and everything. I don't think we can do that personally, but
wouldn't do that.
At the same time, one has got to watch this space to see what is going to happen and be very prayerful. That, you know, as to what God is doing in these days, because he has allowed that, whatever else is the case, he's allowed that to happen, and we need to be very prayerful in these days as to what's going on.
I mean, what certainly is interesting about Obama is his faith, his views, and there have been a lot of things said about whether he's a closet Muslim and whether he follows this Jeremiah rite, which I don't accept actually, but what he has said, this is what he said. Quote it, "I am a Christian, I am rooted in the Christian tradition, I believe there are many paths to the same place, that it is a belief that there is a higher power, a belief that we are connected as people, that there are values which transcend race or culture that move us forward. There's an obligation for all of us to individually as well as collectively to take responsibility to make those values lived," which is very much the line of
all roads lead to God,
all roads lead to God. And what I see happening is, you know, out of this, I mean, with Bush very unpopular in Europe, and a lot of criticism in America, now there'll be much more of a positive attitude towards Europe, and Europe and America could come together much closer. And, you know, they're going to have to deal with China, Russia, the Arab world, bring them all together to seek to resolve the economic issues facing the world. And it's a very interesting time to be.
We certainly need to be watching that space over the next, of course, when he takes office in January and beyond. We really do need to be watching that space, don't we?
And they've talked about him being a global president, and people are saying global problems need a global solution. So we're living in interesting times. Who knows?
Anyway, back to, so whereas we can't be exact on those things, there does certainly seem to be a way that they can fit in with that whole prophetical idea that most people have. So we have a millennium. We believe quite clearly, as far as we're concerned, and obviously if you've got different ideas, email us in or but there is a millennium, and it is biblical, and it's there. The other thing, of course, that you brought up, which I think we've probably got to unpack a little bit more, is the whole area of the rapture.
Indeed.
And first of all, the rapture itself, and then, of course, whether you get, you know, and then where it comes with regard. Most people, I think, that I speak to, accept that there is going to be a great tribulation, and most accept that it's going to be 7 years. Now, first of all, the fact of whether there is a rapture or not, and then where it would fit in with that great tribulation.
Okay, now a lot of people write in and say, you know, there's no word rapture in the Bible, which is true, as there's no word Trinity in the Bible. The word is actually taken from the verses in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16. I'll quote them. 1 Thessalonians 4:16, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Thus we shall always be with the Lord." And the Greek word for caught up there, which is what happens to those who are alive at the time of the Lord's coming, is harpazo, which means to catch up or to seize away. Translated into Latin, it's the Latin word rapio, which then becomes the noun rapture in English. So that's where you get this curious word, which doesn't mean, you know, getting wildly excited. It means being caught away, seized away. No doubt it will be wildly exciting, by the way. But that's 1